Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Pop Culture Yearbook. I'm Captain Logan.
Hey, and I'm TheRealManos.
Hi, Manos!
How's it going, man?
Well, I'm good. Finally, we are going back in time once again, and what year have we traveled back to this time, Manos?
We're taking the Wayback Machine all the way back to 1985.
1985, which, as I said last time, I thought was a really appropriate choice since this is the 30th anniversary of Back to the Future, and that came out that year. That was really cool that you chose that year. So much Back to the Future stuff this year, and I've been really kind of in that mood. So getting to go back to the mid-'80s, I thought was a really kind of exciting thing to get to do. And Manos, why'd you pick this year?
It's because I realized about around the time we shot the video that I had recently hit an anniversary. October 6, 1985 was the date of my first kiss with a girl, in real life.
Ooh.
And it was a wonderful date. I was like 14 years old, and I still remember her name. And we went to the Virginia Beach Rec Center just to spend some time and go to the pool. And I still have this right here on my wall. This is the pool pass.
Oh yeah, you showed us that last time.
I don't know how well you can. I don't know how well you can see this. I kept this in my wallet forever, and as you can tell, it started deteriorating. So I decided to frame it. So yeah, it's kind of nice to know exactly when that happened. But
yeah, that's pretty cool. I certainly couldn't tell you mine. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I even as a kid, I was like, I'm gonna forget this if I don't keep this. So
one thing that I can tell you though, Manos, is that it was not 1985 because I was 1 year old in 1985.
That would be crazy.
Yeah. And my first kiss was from my mother on the forehead.
Aww.
Anyway, so now, as we always do, we're going to talk about a few things that happened in 1985, and then we will jump right into Manos' pick. 1985 was the year that the first mobile phone call was made in the UK. It was the year that Route 66 sadly was removed from the highway system. That scene in Cars, I know I'm the only person in the universe that likes Cars. That scene in Cars about Route 66 going away always tears me up. Like that's the big thing that makes me like that movie more than anybody else is like I'm kind of a jazz guy, and the Route 66 thing really kind of makes me sad. That is the year that the Unabomber killed his first victim. I was thinking that is happening later than that.
I actually thought it was earlier.
Oh, all right. Well,
so we were both wrong.
65, yeah. That was the year that New Coke came out.
It was remarkably successful that we drink today.
Premiered to disastrous response. Possibly the only soda like that, especially if things that somebody put out and like a major corporation had expected to last, that was dropped off the shelves in 3 months. But that's because it wasn't like Coke and New Coke. It was they changed the formula.
Yeah.
And tried to get everybody to drink it. And what I think is really interesting about that is that they did a lot of blind taste tests, and people preferred New Coke, so they thought, okay, we'll just change the formula.
Yeah.
And people wouldn't accept it because Coke was such a American staple and had been around for decades and decades. And I completely understand the response. I think it would have been smarter to just make it another variety instead of replacing it.
If you notice, since then they have done things like that. They've like things like Coke Zero and Pepsi Crystal. And when they come out with these new flavors, it'll be like a spin-off flavor instead of replacing the actual main one. Hey, have you ever tasted that new Coke?
How would you?
I did. I did drink New Coke when it came out, because when I was, I just drank Coke.
I was one.
Well, you couldn't have done that. Well,
yeah. Anybody in 1985 that was old enough to drink soda, if they had a Coke within those 3 months, it would have been a New Coke. So of course you had New Coke.
Yeah, I drank Coke all the time.
Yeah.
I drank Coke and Pepsi all the time, and it wasn't that bad. You'd think it's the Jar Jar of beverages, but it actually was. It was pretty delicious. I think regular Coke is better, but I didn't spit it out and go, "This is disgusting swill." I mean, I liked it. But hey, that's how it goes.
Well, and I think what's something else to keep in mind is that a lot of because of syrups and things, and especially going from real sugar to something else, a lot of these sodas have actually changed their formulas over the years, and I think that a lot of the reason that there was that backlash was because Coke hadn't. Although I don't know if in 1985 all those different sodas had already changed to whatever the sugar substitute was.
Maybe if they had more subtly changed the flavor and maybe didn't make such a big deal out of it.
Yeah, didn't call it something else. But I mean, because like I've gone back and tried the original formula for Mountain Dew.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they've put out the classic editions of that. And I think it's cool that they make that available with the real sugar soda.
Yeah.
And I don't like it as well. I don't know if it's just because I'm used to it or what. It's too sweet for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't care for that. And there's another one too. I tried. I forgot what that I didn't really like the original.
I can't remember. I do not remember what original Mountain Dew tasted like. When I was a kid, I really didn't drink it much. It wasn't until like my 20s that I really started to drink it on and off here and there.
Well, I feel like Mountain Dew got way more popular in the 90s than it ever had been before.
It did. I don't know. To be honest, I don't know why, but it did kind of become the 90s.
Super caffeinated. Because they sold it with extreme sports, man.
Oh my god, I know. Like
that's probably what it was.
Every commercial was, these dude jocks getting pulled into like a lake or jumping into it,
jumping off mountains and
yeah. That's what I want to do when I drink a whole bunch of sugary swill. Is get really exercise and jump around and go nuts. I mean, it doesn't cause you cramps or vomiting or anything.
Well, and also remember that was a decade where like every third pop song seemed to, at least in the early 90s, seemed to have the word jump in it. So there was a lot of jumping going on in the early 90s. But something else I wanted to mention about that, because it just occurred to me that that in Back to the Future 2, Pepsi Perfect is probably making fun of New Coke. I would assume that was shortly after that had happened. And then that was the year that Michael Jordan was Rookie of the Year. It was the year that the first .com domain name was registered, and the domain name is a now defunct company. It was symbolics.com.
Oh,
and I don't even know what Symbolics was. If you go to symbolics.com now, all it is a placeholder page that's making a really big deal out of the fact that it was the first .com.
Like
that's what it is.
Interesting. It's like digital museum, or digital whacker or something like that.
Yeah, that's cool. And then you kind of hope that it stays that way, and whoever owns that domain name, they probably are making sure that.
Yeah, well, yeah, you might even want to donate that to some sort of preservation society or something like that.
Give it to the Library of Congress or something for some sort of preservation. Thing. Imagine if we had imagine if the Library of Congress had a thing for websites, Manos, in the same way it does for movies and literature and things. Trying to preserve important cultural artifacts and works of art and stuff.
I wouldn't doubt that that's something we'll see sometime in the future. It's like,
or maybe
we need to protect pets.com. Maybe
they can also maybe we could also have some sort of society that was there to help make sure that websites that really shouldn't be pornography sites are not pornography sites.
Dream on.
They just buy up everything that really ought to not be that, and then give it to a person that is really going to use it for what it ought to be used for. And that's also the year that Microsoft released its first version of Windows, and it was the year that compact discs were first introduced. CDs, 1985, and caught on real quick. I think my parents had CDs by 88, 89.
I think that was the first time in my life I saw technology switch on a dime.
Right.
Because, vinyl records were just, everywhere. They were so ingrained in the culture. And Laserdiscs came, and we just dropped them like a hot potato. It's amazing how quick that change was. And that was just the beginning. as we've seen, in just recent years with technology.
Yeah, although what's fun about that, of course, is that now vinyl's back in a huge way, and after the music crash, it's become a big collector's market, and nearly everything comes out on vinyl now.
I know. Isn't it weird to just occasionally see a vinyl record of a new record? Every once in a while, I'll see one. It's like, oh man, that's
Well, I say nearly everything. I don't know if a lot of like current pop things and stuff like everything I listen to is put out now on vinyl. So anyway, speaking of music, popular musicians that year included Duran Duran, Bruce Springsteen, Madonna. That was the year that Dire Straits' "Money for Nothing" came out. Wow, that was a really big song. And that was a big year for Phil Collins. That was also the year for We Are the World. Remember We Are the World?
I had that album.
Yeah, of course you did.
Most of it was terrible. There is a Prince song on that album I remember being pretty good. But yeah, we all got caught up in the whole "We Are the World" Live Aid thing, Band-Aid thing.
Yeah. Well, everybody and his dog was involved in that.
Yeah, like, what's Dan Aykroyd doing there? It's like,
I didn't realize Dan Aykroyd was
he's
there.
in the video. Like, if you watch that video, it's like Dan Aykroyd's there.
Yeah, I just remember like some of the musical artists, but I didn't remember that Dan Aykroyd was in the video. Okay.
We as a nation watched this video and we were inspired, and as we watched this video and we're like, oh, look at all the artists. Wait, is that Dan Aykroyd?
And then you start just expecting everybody that anybody's ever heard of to show up in it. Like Muppets should be in that, and
oh, I know. It's just still the weirdest thing. Like, every once in a while I'll see footage where I'm like, why is he there? I mean, I guess the Blues Brothers, but, I wouldn't have put him in the top 50 of musical artists that needed to be there. I put Weird Al first.
That's a good point. Because, I mean, you got Blues Brothers, but obviously that's not the first thing he's associated with.
Yeah, I know. It's like, Ghostbusters, Saturday Night Live, Dr. Detroit, and then Blues Brothers.
And then for films, big popular movies that year, of course, included Back to the Future, Color Purple, Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, and it was and Stallone that year had both Rocky IV and Rambo: First Blood Part 2.
Whew. I
don't know how both of those came out the same year. It's two big mega franchises. When you think of Stallone, you think of those two things, and both of those came out that year, and were both sequels. Hilarious.
Yeah, I guess that makes 85 the most 80s year ever, I suppose.
At the very least, it's the most Stallone year. Yeah, you're right. That is probably the most 80s year.
Yeah, if both of Stallone's major things came out the same year, yeah, that's evidence. 85 is the most 80s year ever.
That's hilarious. For comics, that was, of course, the year of Crisis on Infinite Earths, and I very nearly decided to do Crisis for this show, Manos, and just didn't have the time to reread it because it's so long, it's such a behemoth. Yes. And I also decided that maybe I should save that and actually do a vault on it and do kind of a more standard analysis for that. But anyway, Crisis that year. Yeah, I sat down and I read the first 20 pages of it and I went, this is gonna take me all week. I don't have time to do it. Television, we had, although I guess our this particular episode got staved off for a little while because we had technical difficulties the last time we tried to do this, so I guess I could have done it, but then I got really excited about the thing I picked, so, and then for TV, big shows included MacGyver and Moonlighting. Do you remember, Manos, that there was a Moonlighting reference in I guess those were debut shows. There are other huge things that I didn't write down, but it's just debut shows. Did you know that there was a Moonlighting reference in Ninja Turtles?
Yeah, it was very funny. It's when April and Casey separate and slam their
Yeah. And Donatello's like, this is like Moonlight. I think it was Donatello, I forget. But it took me years before I understood that reference, because as a kid I had no idea what that was. And my wife and I actually had to look it up. Like, she and I both looked at each other the first time we sat down together to watch Ninja Turtles while we were dating. We both looked at each other and went, the heck is Moonlighting? So we had to look that up. We didn't know. It's a really funny gag, but it dates it. But then that movie's already pretty dated.
Yeah,
but not a bad way. It's very much a product of the turn of the 80s to 90s.
Yes, it was. Yes, that's actually a good example of the transition between the 80s and 90s. Wow, I can't believe Moonlighting came out in 85. I remember watching the film, and they did that exact shot of them slamming the doors. I remember thinking, hey, it's kind of like Moonlighting. And then Donatello says that. It's like, I laughed really hard at that.
Yeah, I think it was especially funny because that movie didn't have too many contemporary pop culture references. It doesn't rely on those things, so when it does it, it's just really natural. It's like anybody in 1990 would have said that.
Yeah.
That was the thing to say.
It was smart to not go overboard. It's a bad idea to go overboard with cultural references. Yeah, they're funny at the time and they can be easy, but boy, man, 10, 15 years down the line, you're in danger of like dating your material.
It certainly depends. This would be a really good GNN question, honestly. It certainly, in my mind, Manos kind of depends on what the thing is, because if you have like a really specific focus for your thing, and you're like and it's a parody, and you're lampooning like sci-fi movies, then of course you're gonna have a lot of pop culture references in that. But then usually that sort of thing is gonna go back and not be just things from the last 4 to 6 months, which is the reason that a lot of the movies made by the Scary Movie guys people didn't like, because they were, pretty much just whatever came out the last few months, and often had nothing to do with whatever the subject was.
Oh yeah, it was so bad that it seemed like they were just getting views of trailers and just putting those moments into their movies without even like them having anything to do with what they're doing. It's like, well, let's have Iron Man show up and fart, and that's a joke. That's not a joke. That's not even a good reference.
But maybe like not even in the superhero one. Maybe we'll just do that in the epic one.
Well, that's the thing. That's
what we would do. Is it would just be for whatever had just happened. It doesn't even matter what the joke subject was supposed to be.
I know, it's amazing, and like
those were potentially good ideas. I mean, it could be really fun to have just a really generic movie, mess with all those tropes for any genre you can think of. I mean, I always thought it was a really funny idea to have a line of those. Everything called epic movie, anything called superhero. But I always thought that was a really funny idea. But it was just never executed properly. My problem was never conceptually with those. I don't know why we're talking about this.
That's okay. Well, I mean, I have no problem with parody films. I mean, sometimes I would tell people how much I hated those movies, and they go, "Oh man, what? Hey, they're making fun of Twilight or something." Like, hey, I have no problem making fun of stuff. It's just they're extremely poorly written, and they're as lazy as you can get.
They're just not thoughtful about it. I mean, like it's not Airplane or Naked Gun, and it should have been that. And a lot of them had Leslie Nielsen. I mean, like they should have been to Airplane caliber, or at least they should have been reaching for something like Naked Gun, or the Police Academy movies, or.
Or if we want to talk about, we were talking about Mystery Science Theater before we started recording, and geez, like 90% of their jokes are references. But I actually heard Kevin Murphy explain that their references, they decided to do references that were like references of things going on at the present that they were shooting, all the way back through recorded history.
Yeah.
So. Literally any kind of joke, could be made, and that actually, oddly enough, like helps prevent. I mean, a lot of their jokes did get dated from some episodes, but some of them don't. And what's weird is sometimes things in history kind of come back. Like, there's a lot of Doctor Who jokes in the show. Doctor Who was canceled during most of Mystery Science Theaters. Yeah,
there's way more people now that would get that stuff.
Yeah, and they did a lot of like obscure Lord of the Rings references.
Interesting. Wow, things that became bigger phenomenons than they were, or screen phenomenons when they were. Yeah.
And my wife and I watched Mystery Science Theater almost every day for like 10 years. And I showed her. We Netflixed. Twin Peaks a few months back, and then we started watching just some more episodes, and they're making Twin Peaks references, which it's one of those strange things. Like, she's seen these episodes dozens of times, and now she's seen like the Time of the Apes episode or something like that, like a couple weeks after she finished Twin Peaks, and there's this joke she never got that now it's like an open door. Like
Suddenly the world opens up to you. Yeah, yeah, it's really interesting when that happens, especially when you finally watch something that everyone else on the planet seems to have seen, and then you realize just how culturally significant it is, and how it's shown up in everything. Well, this conversation we just had about parodies for the last 10 minutes will probably seem completely unrelated to the show today, but believe it or not, this will come back later. Manos, what did you choose to talk about today from the year 1985?
from the year 1985. You okay with the theme? You know, I'm good for notes. Is the horror film Re-Animator.
Reanimator, awesome.
Yeah, from Stuart Gordon, and it's loosely based on the H.P. Lovecraft story.
Jeffrey Combs.
Yep, Jeffrey Combs, the Jeffrey Combs role. You know, this is his defining role in his career, and you know, he's gone on to do other things on stage and screen, and he's done a lot of great voice work over the last few years since Batman animated series.
They came back and homaged it in Gotham, and it was completely wasted.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, because they used him in Gotham. He was in 2 episodes, and he gets all his limbs removed, and they could have done so many cool things with that, and they just didn't.
Bad. Yeah, I mean, and he does such a lot of voice work now too. Like he was on Transformers Prime as Ratchet. He was on. I think he plays Multi-Bear on Gravity Falls, which is a very
really? I didn't. Yeah,
and a very
stuff these days.
And Multi-Bear is a very Jeffrey Combs like character. It's this weird creature made out of bears. It's you have to see it to understand it. It's such a weird concept. But the film is it's loosely based on a short story from H.P. Lovecraft, and it stars Jeffrey Combs, Bruce Abbott, Barbara Crompton, and this young guy, Bruce Abbott plays the young doctor, Dr. Kane, and he's this student, and he has this new guy who moves in, who's also going to be working, with him at the hospital, doing kind of experiments and stuff, and he is obsessed with bringing back the dead, starting with Kane's cat. And the cat gets killed while he's away, and he starts to try and reanimate it, and it goes crazy. And he's invented this kind of serum that will bring back the dead to life, but he keeps missing the formula. It's just off. They come back like Ra's al Ghul after he comes out of Lazarus Pit, just insane and trying to kill everybody. And they feel like they got it close. And just when they're about to, get close, they're interrupted. And the father of Kane's girlfriend, Dr. Dean Halsey, is in charge of everything they're working with, gets in the way and is killed by this subject that they brought back to life. They went, they broke into the morgue and tried to bring him back. And it doesn't quite work, and he goes insane and starts beating the crap out of them, and he ends up killing Halsey. So they end up killing this test subject. I mean, and it's such a bloody, horrible mess of a nightmare when it happens. It's just the absolute worst thing. And so they decide to try and bring him back, and it kind of doesn't work either, but it's closer. He's sort of almost like this kind of caveman-like, Neanderthal kind of mentality, but he's not as savage or anything like that. At the same time, he has been fighting with this other doctor, Dr. Harold, and he's jealous. He hates Dr. West, played by Jeffrey Combs, and they're feuding, and he steals his formula, and Dr. West isn't crazy about that, so he kills him, cutting off his head, and decides to experiment further by just bringing back his head. and he becomes this horrible thing where he also reanimated his body, and so his body comes back to life, so he starts carrying his own head around. And first off, there's some humor. That's this is what this film does. It has a lot of like gory horror combined with humor. Not to the extent that the Evil Dead series did. It's still kind of in its own weird reality, but there is some strange humor scenes where he's trying to make his body walk around from across the room and kind of not getting it. Almost like controlling a walking robot or something like that. And he can barely talk. Boy, this film it's one of those horror films that you hear about and you really should see. It's definitely one of the gory films of the 80s. And the 80s was really brought forth all this kind of like makeup and gore and goo kind of stuff. And this is one of the ones that I think did it very well because it had a lot of fun to it and characters you kind of got invested in. Even though Dr. West, what's interesting about Dr. West is he's very Frankenstein-like, and that he's very morally murky. I mean, he could very easily be the villain of this film, but he ends up being sort of the hero, but only because let's say Harold is worse than he is. He's like, he's a thief, and he's a murderer, and a sexual predator, and he's just an awful guy without a head. And it ends spectacular when he tries to stop him, and he set up a trap for West and Kane by bringing him to the morgue, and he had already resurrected everybody in the morgue. So there's this crazy scene where they're fighting all these people who just jumped out of their morgue drawers and stuff like that and attacking. It gets insanely violent. Not as violent or as gory as Peter Jackson's Dead Alive or Brain Dead, which goes into South Park territory as far as gore is concerned. But this one, I think, was a good kind of middle ground. It kind of set the stage a lot for some of these other films. And it does. So there are times where they're a little loose on are these people zombies or are they just back to life and crazy? And I don't know. It's not always clear about that. And then of course it ends amazingly with maybe in case you guys want to see it out there and haven't seen it, I won't exactly say how it ends, but this film delivers.
I actually really appreciate that because usually I don't mind our spoiling things here, but I was actually going to ask you if you wouldn't tell me the ending because believe it or not, I still have never brought myself to sit down and watch Re-Animator, and need to do it because I'm just not a huge horror guy, and I keep forgetting to watch it. It's been on Netflix before. I don't know if it is right now, but I should probably. Is it? Yeah, so I should probably finally sit down and watch it. Let me say this real quick. Two of my favorite actors are huge kind of cult horror guys who have been major recurring actors in Star Trek. One of them is Jeffrey Combs, and the other one is Tony Todd. And I've never seen Reanimator, and I've never seen Candyman.
Yeah.
And I'm going to need to sit down and do that because I love Tony Todd. Also, that's the big role he's most known for, besides his Star Trek work and some other things because he's such a character actor.
Yeah, and this Combs is so great, and he's so creepy. And he's likable, and you don't know whether or not to be on his side or not. He has this kind of passion that the film doesn't really get into his backstory. So important to him, but it is his lifelong obsession and his lifelong work. Where you wonder, is it for the betterment of mankind, or is he just obsessed with it? And it's probably the latter, frankly. But boy, God!
Well, that was the question with Frankenstein too. I mean, you said he's like Victor Frankenstein, but clearly the whole story is very Frankenstein inspired. I mean, you said that it was based on a Lovecraft thing.
Yeah, it was.
But then it sounds like Lovecraft had to have been inspired by Shelley.
Well, I got to tell you, I mean, Shelley, she kind of pretty much with one story, like invented horror, modern horror, and modern science fiction all in one.
General, yeah, and I mean that was the subject and the themes that she were dealing with were so poignant. Nobody had tackled in that way, and that you know the questions of over mechanization and whether or not we were getting we were technologically getting too big for our britches were with questions that were on everybody's minds, but nobody had tackled it that way yet. So it's really hard not to just keep rewriting Frankenstein.
Yeah, I know.
Frankenstein, and then and as far as mad scientists go, and then of course Dr. Jekyll, which you do anytime you want to do more of the identity question of whether or not you can fight your dark side. So if you want to do that with mad science, you go to Dr. Jekyll, and if you want to do cautionary tales about relying too much on technology or trying to go farther than messing with nature, then you go to Frankenstein.
Yeah, it does that. It's a little more fun, and it knows it. It just has a good time making this film without going too far. I think it's a good happy middle down the road, right down the middle of what it should do. And I've been a horror fan, and this is one of those films I just hadn't gotten to, and I saw it not that long ago, and so
really?
Yeah.
Okay, I assumed maybe this was one you had seen when it was out.
I saw Stuart Gordon's other film, From Beyond, first years ago, and also with Jeffrey Combs, and boy, that was really creepy and weird, and it's, so yeah, that one actually, man, when I saw that, that was like, I thought that was too far as gore, and then of course, life goes on. I see other films,
Wow, yeah.
but I remember being knocked out by that one, and I just never got around to this film until recently. And I just stumbled upon it like on Netflix. Like, oh my god, they have Re-Animator. Let's totally watch it. And then we started doing, it's funny. We started doing Yearbook again, and 85. I started thinking 85. I'm like, oh wait, what's Re-Animator 85? Let's do it. And that's kind of how. That's the story of how Justin decided to do Re-Animator.
Well,
I hope you enjoyed it.
I was on the edge of my seat. Let's all go to the lobby.
But yeah, it's a lot of fun. And Stuart Gordon, I've only seen a couple of his films, really. I've seen this, From Beyond, and Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, which is another film he made.
Oh, that's also him? Okay.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes.
Which is a weird movie in its own right, but obviously he decided to do a totally different genre and a different kind of thing, and.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if that.
It still seems to be, but maybe it's like that James Cameron thing where he's like, I want to try to push the boundaries of special effects, but in this other thing.
Yeah, I don't know if he meant to do Honey, I Shrunk the Kids in a more ghastly, horrific way, or it was always supposed to be what it was. I don't know about that. Whichever is the story, I'd be curious to hear which is which. But yeah, it's funny.
When you're a kid, where you're like, well, this was aimed really hard at families, but there's moments where it just feels like kind of wrong and twisted's not the right word, but and then it's almost like grossly wholesome in places, that movie, and then you get into the horribleness of the situations they're in, and you're like, I think they're trying to subvert my expectations by making these characters. I watched that with Jason not too long ago, and I hadn't seen it since I was a kid. That was a weird experience, man. I was going back to that thing, but I wonder if the idea wasn't like, we'll create these stereotypes of really like sickeningly wholesome people and then put them in these just absolutely terrible situations, but then never go. But then as you said, talking about Reanimator, it makes me wonder if originally he hadn't planned on having all the children get eaten
or something really gross
or something. Yeah,
and he's not the first horror director that's gone on to do like well-known kid stuff. The director Bob Clark, who made Black Christmas and Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things, made also Christmas Story.
Oh, okay, all right.
So
but there's some unsettling and unnerving things in that too.
Yeah, and yeah, you can see those sensibilities.
Huh. Yeah, so obviously they're bringing that to the table on purpose.
I always enjoy when horror directors make non-genre films and get to see what they can do. They sometimes bring their own sensibilities to it. It doesn't happen as much because horror directors can get stereotyped just as bad as any actor. Sometimes even worse. Like like nobody wants to give, nobody wants to give, John Carpenter or Tim Burton, a different kind of film outside of their usual wheelbase. So
Yeah, like imagine, if you will, you give John Carpenter a like romantic comedy.
yeah,
What would that be like? Or you give Tim Burton or you give Tim Burton a romantic comedy. Like I can't get out. Well, because the thing is, he has done other things that he just turns into.
Yeah.
His sort of film, you know what I mean? So like I'm thinking about this and I'm like, well, nah, he's done a musical now, and he's done other things that like would not seem as weird and out there, but then he just put the exact same stamp on it. So I feel like anything he did, because I was gonna say period epic, but if he did that, it would be like,
I've seen Tim Burton try to experiment every once in a while out of his usual style.
I think Big Fish is very different.
Big Fish is very different, and Big Eyes, Amy Adams.
Okay, so if he's making a movie with the word "big" in it, then it's going to have a different style, Manos.
Or Ed Wood. Ed Wood, I think.
Yeah, but that was still pretty early, wasn't it?
It was still early, but still deep within Tim Burton-ness. And
okay.
But his biopics are really good because Big Eyes is also a biopic, and it's actually one of his best films. And
I have not seen enough Tim Burton movies apparently then, because I did not know about that one.
Oh yeah, it kind of came and went, and nobody noticed it, and it kind of makes me mad because like everybody complains that Tim Burton just does the same thing over and over again. Then he did this really great movie that's not too similar to what he usually does, and nobody saw it. So hey, all right, good. Enjoy his sequel to Alice in Wonderland, you jerks.
Yeah, well, and then if that's yeah, and
I blame you.
But well, if that's the case, Manos, then it is completely unfair for any of us to keep complaining that he just keeps making the same kinds of movies, because the guy wants to work, like. Yeah. Nobody's gonna watch that movie, and what his fans really want is that. It's kind of hard to complain.
Yeah, I mean, granted, nobody should have even let him near Planet of the Apes, but I respect it.
Or Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I'm not saying that that's not a warranted criticism, but then if he goes off and he does, and if it was good, people should have supported it. But then I never heard about it, so then maybe you can complain that the studio didn't do a good enough job of letting us know about it.
Possibly, we could always blame that, but
yeah, sure.
Getting back to Stuart.
It's just a perspective on Tim Burton, though.
Yeah. Getting back to Stuart Gordon, yeah, he's one of those directors that he's never became one of those name directors, because like Tim Burton or John Carpenter or Kubrick or something like that.
Sam Raimi.
Yeah, or Sam Raimi. He occasionally he still makes movies. He's just not one of those name like A-list directors. He just keeps making really cool stuff. Occasionally not as good as others, but some of his stuff. Look, he made Re-Animator, so he made Re-Animator and Honey, I Shrunk the Kids and From Beyond, and to be honest, that's a great career because those are 3 awesome movies.
Yeah. Okay. Well, are you good?
I'm great.
Okay. All right. Every now and again, I just have to check in with my co-host. You feel all right? You need somebody to come in and check your pulse? Maybe bring you some animal crackers? Are you good? All right. Well, interestingly, Manos and I picked sort of related things in that both of the things we chose are cult movies. And we've both been picking movies a lot lately. I like to do other things sometimes, but the years we've been picking lately, I keep gravitating toward films. And this time I chose the at the time unsuccessful, but has become kind of a cult thing. And I don't think classic is the right word for it, but it is a thing that is more widely loved now than I think a lot of people ever would have expected it to be. And it is the movie based on the classic board game Clue.
Ah, excellent.
And yeah, 1985. This is one of my wife's very favorite movies, and I had not seen it before Sarah and I started dating, and didn't even know about it at the time. It was like, what? There's this movie based on the board game with Christopher Lloyd and Tim Curry? That's like the coolest idea ever. Let's throw them and Michael McKean in a movie together. That's like the coolest idea ever, and those guys do not disappoint in this, in my opinion. This is a thing that, when it came out, was had really mixed reviews, and Roger Ebert gave it a 2 out of 4, and said that it was, I think the quote was, it was so thin. The plotting was so thin that all the actors just look uncomfortable. I didn't have that experience with it at all. I think they look uncomfortable because they're supposed to, and because of the situation they're in, and because they're all these like really shady stereotypes that have all done something wrong and are being blackmailed for it, and or have these high profile careers that can and other things. There's different situations for different ones of them that their lives are going to be completely ruined by this Mr. Body, whose name is spelled with 2 D's. It's absolutely fantastic. And so anyway, so the premise for Clue is, it's the board game. Basically, the idea is, how do you take that board game and dramatize it and turn it into a narrative? The smartest move they made was, let's not take this remotely seriously. So they basically tried to give it the same flavor as the card game, so they made it really hokey and kitschy, and and basically just tried to create characters that would make sense based on what we know about them in the game, which is what they look like. And a couple of them have like titles and ranks or something, so like Colonel Mustard, what's he a colonel of? So they kind of cast and your body type with mostly popular comedians, but tried to make them look like the characters that were in the board game, and it's a parody of these kinds of whodunit, everybody's in a mansion and somebody dies, what happens kind of movies, of which there had been many before this, and so this is ripe to make fun of that material. So it's not just a farce of whatever. We're actually doing a straight up parody of this basic premise of a sometimes horror film, sometimes just murder mystery, sometimes both. Those kinds of movies, House on Haunted Hill, those kinds of things. Yeah. And so basically the premise is somebody has called all these people here through a letter, and and somebody has been blackmailing all these people, and they don't know why they're there, and they don't know what the whole point of all this is, and then the guy who's supposedly the host arrives, who's Mr. Body, and he turns out to be the person that's been blackmailing all of them, but then it turns out that even he wasn't the person that brought them there in the first place, and he also got a letter, and it's this really convoluted mystery, but convoluted in a hilariously good way, in my opinion. I think, like, after a while, I just can't even keep up with it anymore, and I kind of don't care. And then, the more times you see it, the more you start picking up on little things. You go, actually, this all does make sense. I mean, it's completely convenient, and it is completely implausible, but, like, we have noodled all this out. And so anyway, he gets killed, presumably at first, and then it turns out that it wasn't actually dead, and he gets killed again. So the whole movie is all these characters going around trying to figure out who exactly did it, and of course where and with what weapon. And one of the big fun things is that when Mr. Body shows up, he's got all these presents for them, and each of them opens one, and one of them is a candlestick, and one of them is the rope, and one of them is the revolver, and they're each wandering around with these weapons the whole movie, and you always have the question of if the person that had that weapon actually killed someone with it, and there are, by the end of the movie, the same number of corpses as there are of the number of guests, minus the butler. And that leads to my favorite of the endings, the quintessential definitive. There are 3 different endings, and the best of them, of course, is that each of them killed someone, and they all had different motives, and that there wasn't one person that did all of it. So I'll talk about the alternate endings here in a second. I guess the first place I should go is talking a little bit about how it incorporates all the board game stuff, because that's my favorite thing about it. I think this is incredibly clever. It has every piece of how the board game plays factors into the story somehow and kind of adds to the absurdity of it. So you have all the weapons, of course, you got to have that, but the way the game always played was you have to call someone like a person in a room with what weapon. So and I never thought of this before, how in the world would you have a corpse in a house but not know what room they got murdered in? That never occurred to me playing the board game until I watched this movie. So they had to contrive a reason that we don't know what room he gets killed in. And the way they do that is by having him fake his death. And I forget if this is different in different alternate endings, but I think the idea is supposed to be that that at first he fakes his death for some reason, and that then he gets actually murdered right after that in another room, but then he's found in a closet, and we don't know exactly what room it happened in. So now we've added in the killed with who, with what weapon, and in what room thing. It's got the secret passageways, and I'm pretty sure that the secret passageways actually connect exactly to where they do in the board game, where like the one that leads to the kitchen from another place is actually the exact same way in the board game. My favorite thing that they figured out how to somehow shoehorn into this from the board game is Tim Curry's, and this is the best scene anyway just because it's so funny, but it occurred to me on another watch, Manos, that there is a board game reason for why Tim Curry runs all over that mansion and makes everybody follow him. And it's because when you're playing the game, in order to say who you think got killed where, you have to get to that room first.
Yes.
So they've got Tim Curry running all over the house because that's the rules of the board game. That's hysterical.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my favorite thing about it. Of course, Tim Curry has such a hilarious performance in this. The way he says no is like he does that 5 times and it never gets old. Like it's always really funny. So I'll talk a little bit about some other things from the movie, but I guess first I'll talk about the alternate ending thing. This is the big misstep for me in how it was originally released. Like, I think so John Landis co-wrote this with the director, and the director is not somebody that I was familiar with, Manos. Maybe you can tell me anything else that you know him from. It was... give me a second. Written, let's see, the director was Jonathan Lynn.
Not familiar with the name.
I don't right away know him from anything else. I guess I could look it up real quick. But anyway, so Landis had this clever idea of let's have alternate endings, and when we put it out in the theater, let's randomize it so when somebody goes to the theater, they'll get a different ending.
Yeah.
And you'd have to go multiple times to see multiple endings, but then you wouldn't even know if you would get them. And then when they released it on VHS, and then again later on DVD, they have it so that you actually get to see all 3 endings in a row. And I think that's how they should have put it out in the first place, because there is and it makes me wonder if Roger Ebert did not see the quintessential ending, because if he didn't, that would have greatly affected his review, I think, because there is a huge joke right at the very end that pays off a lot of things and kind of just leaves you with the sentiment that you should be left with at the end of that movie. If you don't have it, the movie is incomplete. It's not as funny, and because the quintessential, the other 2 endings are one of the women did it in the other 2.
Leslie Ann Warren's character, Miss Scarlet.
Yeah, well, one was Scarlet and one was Peacock.
Yeah.
And then the last ending, it's everybody did it, but then like the butler brought everybody there, and that he's actually the real Mr. Body, and the other Mr. Body was actually his butler, and it's really clever. But the really cool thing is that we get this great payoff for Michael McKean's character, where it turns out that he's the guy who's been working for the CIA, and in each of these different versions, somebody's working for the CIA. And so at the very end, he reveals that he's been working for the CIA. I guess I am spoiling Clue if you haven't seen Clue, so like you might want to turn this off. But I want to talk about this.
You're spoiling one ending, so.
Yes, but his line at the end. Well, I said who did it with the other two already, so
that's true.
I spoiled all three of them. But anyway, so sorry about that because Manos did not spoil Reanimator for me. Thank you. I'm selfish and I only care about me, Manos. No, I'm kidding. I'm sorry about that. So yeah, go watch Clue and then watch the rest of this. But anyway, so Michael McKean's character is it turns out is working for the CIA and he shoots the real Mr. Body, who is the butler, and that's Tim Curry's character, and reveals that his whole. Everybody else is who they said they were, but he's had this whole facade the whole time where he's been pretending like he's this homosexual guy who, and there's a lot of like social commentary about the way we look at culture. We looked at culture and stuff in the 50s, and this is set in the mid 50s. There's a whole lot of really amusing things about communism and
well, it's only a red herring.
That's one of the best lines in the movie. It's only a red herring. That also reminds me, I'm jumping all over the place, but that line is at the end and is in, I think, all three of the endings. They do a lot of really cool, clever rewrites of things where certain bits that would be in one ending are included in another ending, but in a different place, and sometimes not even for the same reasons. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it would have different context.
Yeah, I really liked that. But anyway, so you've got Michael McKean's character. He was allegedly being blackmailed because if it was ever found out that he was a homosexual, he'd get fired. And then at the very end, it turns out that he's this CIA agent, and that he made all that up. And the very last line of the movie is, "I'm going to go home and sleep with my wife," and that's hilarious every time. And I can't imagine seeing this movie and not getting that. It's one of the funniest bits in the whole thing. And then right before that, and this is the actually kind of the more important reason you got to have that ending, is he says, "It was me in the hall with the revolver." You can't have that movie without somebody saying that. You know, say like you have to have that. So I wish that it had been not that I was there, but I oh, by the way, that's also another really funny Tim Curry line where he's like and then I was in the hall. I know because I was there. But anyway, so he So I think that it should have been released with the multiple endings, just the way it is on the DVD and the VHS. It is kind of neat that on the DVD, you can play it with a random ending if you want to.
Yeah.
So you can watch it with all of them together, or you can just toggle it to select a random ending, and that's kind of fun. Manos, are you aware that there was filmed a yet fourth ending?
Oh no, I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, that did not make it into the final cut because Jonathan Lynn decided that it was bad and he just didn't like it, so he did so they didn't use it. But it was this version where apparently the butler actually killed everybody, and he just actually somehow rather managed to kill all of them, and then at the end he gets attacked by police dogs. Manos, are you there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm here. You there?
Sorry, I don't know if because you froze up for a second.
Okay, yeah, you froze up for a second too. Yeah, I heard what you said about the final fourth ending. That
and then he gets attacked by police dogs.
Yeah,
and
that's not very Clue.
Yeah. Well, here's what's weird about that to me. There's a bit toward the beginning where Mr. Body tries to get out of the house, or pretends like he's trying to get out of the house, I think. And he goes up against some glass, and the reason he can't leave through that exit is because there are dogs there.
Oh yeah.
And but here's the thing. The dogs that in this other ending that Tim Curry would have been attacked by would not have been the same dogs. So, like, it wasn't even a setup for that. It's just there would have been another set of dogs. I'm really glad they didn't use that ending. Because it would have been cool if he, for some reason, they could come up with a reason that he would get attacked by those dogs, because that would be a cool, like, plant payoff thing, but that's not what happened.
Well, it was so ironic, because remember, remember how he hated being torn apart by dogs? And then that's how he died?
Yeah, remember that? So as I said, this movie sort of flopped at the box office. It grossed about $500,000 less than its budget, and its budget was only $15 million. So it didn't do real well. But it has since, as I said, become kind of a cult hit. There is an episode of the show Psych, which I've only seen like the pilot of, and I thought it was okay, but I didn't continue watching it. There was an episode of Psych called 100 Clues, where they brought back Martin Hall and Christopher Lloyd and Leslie Ann Warren and had them as suspects in murders at a mansion. And they did this whole Clue tribute episode, and they did the multiple ending thing. Now, I haven't watched it yet. I gotta go in and watch that. They apparently do the multiple ending thing, but they let viewers at home vote on who killed the people.
Oh my god, that's so funny.
I think it's super cool. Yeah.
I always loved this film. I caught it on HBO when it came out, like the next season or something like that, or year. And HBO was playing all three endings.
Oh, good. Okay, cool.
So I have never had the experience of just watching one of the endings. I've always watched all three endings each time.
It also just makes more sense that way because, you Clue is a really fast game, so you hardly ever play the Clue and only play it once. You usually play it 2 or 3 times in a row.
Yeah.
If you think about it. So, like, you'd want to see different people, at the end. A couple other quick tidbits. Originally, Carrie Fisher was supposed to play Miss Scarlet.
Oh, wow. That would have been interesting.
But that was just before she went into drug and alcohol rehab.
Mm-hmm.
And so she wasn't able to be in the movie because she had to go clean herself up.
That's too bad. Actually, she would have been pretty good for that. She has a really good sense of comic timing. And she's never really had a chance to really show that off much in film.
No, and you're right. That's sad. It would have been... obviously, I don't think it would have probably changed the trajectory of her career that much, considering that the movie wasn't successful. But, yeah. But I'm with you. It would have been cool to see her in that. I like the actress they got, though.
But, yeah, Leslie Ann Warren's cool. I've always considered her the other Susan Sarandon. And she...
I was trying to think of... Yes, I was thinking Susan Sarandon this entire time. Yeah.
They've always reminded me of each other. And she's pretty good in this film. And I don't know how much in the minority I am in, but I always liked her ending better, where she was the killer.
Okay.
I feel like everybody likes the biggest ending.
I just feel like that's the definitive, and again,
I agree. I think it is the definitive ending.
Just because it has a couple of things that movie needs. That's all, and because it's kind of fun that since it's based on a board game where it could be anybody, and you play it, you might play it lots of times. Everybody involved was a killer.
Yeah, well, I mean that's one of the charming things about that particular ending is like, hey, anybody that could be the killer. Well, hey, how about everybody being the killer?
Everybody's the killer. You didn't see that coming.
And let's see. I feel like I've only seen one person publicly like the ending as much as I did. Was Renegade Cut. I don't know if you ever watched his videos. He analyzed the heck out of this movie, trying to figure out which ending had the least amount of loopholes, therefore could have been considered the real ending.
Yeah.
And
he said that one made the most sense?
Yeah, he said actually that has the least amount of loopholes, so it's most probable the actual ending.
I have to watch that. I'm glad to hear that somebody's done an in-depth video on it, because I seriously considered doing a Rewind United on it. I had so much fun with it.
I'd love to see you talk about it. It's a great film. I've always really dug that film. God, there's so many great ones. Madeline Kahn is in that film, and her line about flames on my face just makes me laugh every time I even think about it.
I always wondered if that was an ad-lib.
It was an ad-lib. It was an ad-lib.
And then Tim Curry just starts talking over her after a while, like she did,
oh, I know. That is so...
She couldn't get her thoughts together. That's hilarious.
Him and Martin Mull, reacting like, what is going on? And, yeah, that was kind of an ad-lib. She did have some other line, but she just went in this other direction with it, and it was the cut that was just the funniest over and over again, so they went with that one.
I'll give you real quick my two favorite bits or lines in the whole movie. One of them is again toward the end, and I think it might be even in that last ending when somebody somebody says, yeah, it's in that last ending, I think, when somebody says, is the CIA really in the business of cleaning up these kinds of messes? And Tim Curry says, yes. Why do you think it's run by a man named Hoover? I love that. That's hilarious. And I also the thing that always stuck with me the most for whatever reason is the cop who comes in and is looking around the house and they keep locking him in a room with the phone.
Yeah.
There's a scene where he finally gets out and they've set up one of the rooms to look like everybody is partying or like making out.
Yeah.
But it's with the corpses. It's just like, and before he goes in, I forget which character, but somebody says you can't go in there. It's too shocking. And then he goes in and he sees what he thinks are just people making out, and he says, "That's not all that shocking. These people are just having a good time." And I don't know why, but just delivery, it was that you have to kind of be there. But that was always the thing that really just, I don't know, the word choice there. It's just people making out. That's not all that shocking. Just having a good time.
Another favorite moment of mine is da-da-da-da-da-da, this is your singing telegram.
Yeah, and the shot is like it's an insert shot. The shot, like you don't even see like a flash in front of her or anything. Yeah, it's pretty funny.
Every time I see that, that's hilarious. And that's actually the actress who played that singing telegram is Jane Wiedlin from the Go-Go's, the rock band the Go-Go's for the 80s.
That's weird. That could have been anybody.
I know.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
She has a minor acting career. She's also in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Boy, she was young.
Yeah, I know. I think.
Wow.
So that's still.
I never would have guessed.
Yeah. Because I remember.
See, I always do this. I always bring up something that Manos knows more about than I do.
I haven't seen the film for a while, so there's.
I guess that's what happens when we pick we pick years that you were around for and I wasn't or barely was.
I do have a slight disadvantage when we pick my years.
Or you mean advantage? I have a disadvantage.
Excuse me. Yeah, I have an advantage. Excuse me.
Yeah, well, you've had another, 13 years to see Clue more times than me.
That's true, and I've seen it probably, yes, a lot.
I was curious to know if you were on the side of it's funny or it's lame, because again, it was kind of critically all over the place when it came out, and I never understood. I think it's really funny. I mean, yes, all the characters are complete cartoons. They're supposed to be. It's that kind of movie, but I think it's very consistent about it.
I've always thought the film was funny. I thought it was funny when I was a teenager. I think it's funny today. I think it's just the rhythm and the pacing of it is really good. It's smarter than it is. Smart.
I never thought about this till just now. I think it was smart to make it a period piece. It didn't have to be. I mean, it could have been set at any time. I think it makes sense to do that because that house and the look of the characters and the cards especially look dated.
Yeah.
But because they went period, they don't end up with a bunch of contemporary pop culture references and things like that. And so it ends up being more timeless.
And also that.
It doesn't feel necessarily like an 80s movie. I mean, it's got a lot of 50s stuff in it, but it's a period piece. So that makes it a little bit more timeless.
And Clue always had that kind of Agatha Christie kind of feel to it, with the house and the gathering of might be murders. I think either the 50s or the 30s would have been a good time.
Sure.
To place that film. Also, lends. The time period also lends to the pacing of the humor, where it's a little more old school. I mean,
that's a good point.
A lot of comedic films in '85 didn't have this kind of feeling to it and rhythm and pace.
Well, maybe that's the reason some people didn't like it. I hate to say they just didn't get it, but maybe they didn't pick up on the idea that they were trying to that it was paced a little bit more like a comedy from that period.
That would be my guess. Actually, it was engaging in a style of humor that just was not in vogue at the time. So people really weren't into it.
And that's maybe a fair criticism. I mean, I suppose you could say that it's just outdated and outmoded, but I don't know. I think it's funny.
Mm-hmm. And I think I think we still talk about it today.
Yeah.
The film has a pretty big fan base, and it's grown over the years. I saw a showing at the library like a couple years ago with Lindsay.
Oh, really? Cool.
Yeah, and people still love it. They did this episode of Psych. Yeah, I mean, Psych doesn't make tributes to Rambo 3, so I mean, uh,
I wonder if anybody has ever put this on for a stage play, because it'd be real easy to do that. And there are, like murder mystery comedic stage plays. There also, of course, are like those murder mystery like games that you play at parties where where it's almost like an RPG where somebody's like a game master and they read what's going on. And I always wondered if that existed before this, or if this had something to do with the popularity of that eventually happened. Because I went to a couple parties that did that in the 90s. So I don't know the history of those things, of the murder mystery party nights. But yeah, I wonder how influential this thing has ultimately ended up being. There was supposed to be a remake. And it's in development hell now. We're like there was supposed to be one that was supposed to come out in 2013, and then that fell through. But then it was reported at some point that it was like back in pre-production, and it's never we've never heard anything else. So it's in development hell apparently, and I kind of hope it never happens. I don't know that we need another. I think this treatment could be done to other board games first. I don't know that we need to really remake Clue. Although I was racking my brain earlier trying to think of what other things you could do this with, and the difficulty is there aren't a lot of other board games that have characters where like you just got these blank slate faces that you could just add personalities to. There was talk for a long time about a Monopoly movie, and that could be really funny, but I hope you do it in a tongue-in-cheek way, because the original announcement that I heard for that when that was supposed to happen was that it was going to be this social commentary, really anti-capitalist thing, which is funny because the game was originally made by an anti-capitalist.
Yeah.
The whole point of it was that you would play it and hate capitalism, and amusingly that doesn't happen. Anyway, so So I like that idea if we're tongue in cheek about it. If we're like this movie was with like the 50s era patriotism, do that with modern era capitalism, or even set it. Period. Even do a Monopoly set in like turn of the century, like a 1890s Monopoly or something.
1930s would be maybe the 30s or the Depression would be probably a good place to set it. I mean, maybe,
that would. But I'm thinking Industrial Revolution, just because that's when the game was invented.
Stop for a second. Okay.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Maybe do a period piece like that. Like in the Depression era, maybe the era when the game came out. Frankly.
Well, but see, that's why I'm thinking turn of the century Industrial Revolution, because that's when the original version of it was actually first made before it became a big Parker Brothers thing, and it just makes a lot of sense that you'd be thinking a lot about economy and changes in economy right around the Industrial Revolution, but both of those periods, I think.
See the problem. The advantage Clue has over a lot of other board games is you're right. It has characters. Yeah, they're kind of thin just for the purpose of the game, but they were enough to kind of build a movie and build characters around. Versus
there's enough recognizable material. All you had. I didn't see it, but all you had with Battleship was, well, you got ships firing at each other. That's what you got.
What did they do? They started adding these stupid alien things to it. It's like I don't remember aliens in Battleship. I've played the game a few times. I'm just fighting another battleship.
I mean, I think having force fields in the middle so people can't see what they're aiming at is amusing. Because it's like what would you have? You gotta have some sort of partition if you're gonna make a battleship movie. I think that's kind of funny. What else do you do? Gouge everybody's eyes out so they can't see, or turn off all their radios, or their sensor equipment? What do you do?
Or fog. We have fog in real life.
That's true. That's a hard sell. That's a hard movie to do.
It is a hard movie.
You do it in a silly tongue-in-cheek way. Some people I talked to, including Vince, said that it was funny for what it was. I haven't seen it, so I don't know. But like the only thing I could think of really was Guess Who? Because guess who has all these characters with first names and they have all these distinct faces? But if you were to make that movie, it'd be a bunch of people they can't see the other side and trying to guess who the other people are. And I don't know how that would work. So anyway.
Yeah, there's not very many of our beloved board games that you can convert into a film. I mean, this is actually one of the ones that was tailor-made because it did have kind of a cinematic quality to it.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I would put Clue up against a lot of video game movies.
I was going to say the same thing. Clue helps board game movies have a decent track record against video game movies.
Yeah, I would put that up against Resident
Not that there
Evil.
are very many of them. I mean, I think there are a lot of things where you could use the board game as a basis, but to make it feel like an actual cinematic adaptation of one,
Yeah.
Clue's the best choice, and luckily, in my humble opinion, it was done as well as I can imagine. Something else I forgot to mention earlier is they had really fun details. Like I never noticed this, and again until the most recent time I watched it. All of the cars that they drive up in are the colors of the game pieces.
Oh, yeah, I never even caught that.
That's pretty cool. So there's a lot of neat little subtle things where they had a really good time with this movie. And we're really thoughtful about how do you bring this thing to life. And that house is really cool.
It is a beautiful set piece. I don't know anything about the exterior set or the interior set, but
I didn't do any research on that.
It's a simple mostly interior film, but God, it's a beautiful movie to look at, even though because that house is just kind of amazing to look at.
Yeah, and I mean, again, it's not a movie that would cost a lot to make, which is probably why it got made in the first place. But obviously, they put a lot of their budget in that set.
Yeah.
It's really cool, and a lot of the actors that they were using at the time are bigger names now than they were then, and well, some of them. I mean, Christopher Lloyd was getting real hot right then. And this came Back to the Future both same year, so he had 2 movies that year. And I don't think he had anything else that year, but he had at least 2 movies that year. And
I don't think so. I mean, he might have still been doing Taxi at the time.
No, Taxi was before this.
Taxi was over. I can't remember when Taxi ended.
I thought it was over already, but I'd have to look up the years for it.
It may have been a year earlier. Maybe the show may have ended in '83 or '84.
Okay, I thought it was even 5 or 6 years before that, but I don't remember when it started.
I think it started in the late '70s, like '79, '80. I know most of the run was in the '80s, like the early '80s.
82.
Mm-hmm.
No, 83 because it switched networks for the final season.
Yeah, it went from ABC to NBC for the last season.
Wow,
yeah.
I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I thought it. I'm sorry, I had my dates wrong. See, I wasn't alive yet, so some of this stuff I don't quite. I thought Taxi was more like 74, 75. I didn't know.
Oh no! I mean, we could do a show about that someday.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was when Andy Kaufman really exploded.
Yes.
Danny DeVito. I mean, this was Danny DeVito's.
I mean, I know all that. I just forgot what the years were. Yeah.
But what am I?
Well, remember, I did. No, that wasn't for your book. That was for Netflix Roulette. But Eric and I talked once about Man on the Moon, and I learned a whole bunch about it doing that movie, which is one of my favorite movies now. I really like that movie.
That's a great movie, and it's so crazy. Danny DeVito plays a character. He plays his manager in that movie, and then they get to the part where they relive the moments from Taxi, and he's the only one who doesn't show up because he's playing another character in the movie.
Yeah. Wouldn't it have been really weird if they had recast Danny DeVito to play his part in that, but then he was still there? I can't even imagine doing that. It would have been great. But I bet everybody watching that movie when they got into the taxi season were like, okay, who'd they get to play Danny DeVito in a movie with Danny DeVito?
Yeah, I was waiting for that. I remember being a little disappointed that they didn't try something. Like, oh, okay.
I'm trying to remember, was the manager in the room? Like, wasn't he actually in one of the taxi scenes? I forget. Maybe he wasn't. I don't believe he was in the montage.
Okay.
I forget.
But it's like, oh darn! I wanted to see somebody pretend to be Danny DeVito with all the other actors reliving their roles.
I want to see that too, because he's got such a distinctive face and build, and he's short, and I don't know what talented person you get that can be Danny DeVito. Like, good luck. Well, anyway, everybody, thanks a bunch for watching. We're gonna go ahead and finish up here and reveal now what our date, what our year will be for next time. Manos, Geekvolution's been around for almost 7 years now. I can't even get my head around how long I've been doing this. And we've been doing Yearbook for much of that time, or at least we were doing it and then left for a while, and now we're back doing it again.
Yeah.
But we're into a time now where we actually can go back to years that we were doing this and haven't touched yet, which is kind of interesting. And so I thought for next time I would choose the year 2010. 2010, and I'm not sure what I'm going to pick yet, but that was the second year of Geekvolution, and I want to say you and I had already started this show. Maybe it was just after that. I forget. I have to go back and look at the dates. But anyway, so 2010, a year that we would not have considered doing when we started this show because we're probably still living in it, and we'll be 6 years old next year, which is absolutely mind-boggling. I was married 2 years, and Sarah and I will have our 7th wedding anniversary next year. Absolutely insane.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
2010, Lindsay and I have been dating for like 10 years. No, 4 years. We've been dating 4 years at that point. And, man, it's crazy. It's amazing.
But,
Think how
this is a fun show, Manos. I really enjoyed your pick. I'm glad you went with Reanimator and reminded me that I need to finally sit down and watch that.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. It's gory. Don't watch it with the kids, but it's a lot of fun. It delivers on a lot of fun, cool premises, and isn't too dark, but it is definitely like worth a shot. And I love Clue. I'm glad you picked that. Actually, I love that movie.
Well, thanks once again, folks, for watching. We would love to hear your opinions about the movies that we talked about today, if you have seen them. And next time, 2010, join us in a couple weeks for that. And in the meantime, I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm the Real Manos.
And we'll see you next time.